Russia has accused Ukraine of attacking the Kremlin with drones in a failed attempt to assassinate its president, Vladimir Putin. The footage of the alleged attack shows an object flying over the Kremlin before a small explosion. Russia claims that it downed 2 drones that targeted Putin's residence before they could strike. The Kremlin decried the alleged attack attempt as a terrorist act. Russia has said that it retains the right to respond when and where it sees. Reports say that the alleged attack took place around 2:30 a.m. local time. Putin was not in the Kremlin at the time of the incident. In a statement, Russia also said that Putin was safe and his schedule was unchanged. It added that the Victory Day parade would take place as scheduled on the 9th of May. Victory Day is a major public holiday commemorating the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. This event is also a chance for Putin to rally Russians behind what he calls his special military operation in Ukraine. Several foreign dignitaries are expected to be present at the event. The Kremlin, however, did not present any evidence to back up its account of Ukraine being behind this attack. On the other hand, Ukraine has said that it has nothing to do with this drone strike.
As far as the reaction to this attack is concerned, first of all, the Russians are making it very clear that they will take action. Now, what kind of action will be taken, we don't know. Number one, will it be an attack, let's say, on the presidential palace in Kiev? We don't know, but that is a possibility. Will it mean more missile attacks on Ukrainian cities like Kiev and Kharkov and so on? We don't know, but that is a possibility. Will it mean an extended, very strong attack on Ukrainian positions in the east before the Ukrainian counteroffensive happens? It's called a spoiling attack. Well, we don't know, but that's possible as well. Fourth, there have been some murmurs, some rumors about tactical nuclear attacks, but it's hard to believe that anybody, any person would use a nuclear weapon today. But as far as India's position is concerned, India has made it very clear. He told Mr. Putin, Prime Minister Modi has told Mr. Putin that the 21st century is not a time for war.
And we have some breaking news on this. The big update on the story is that Volodymyr Zelensky has now said that Ukraine is not attacking Moscow, but it is only fighting for its own territory. This is what I quote from that statement from the Ukrainian president. It says, "I can repeat this message. I think it will be clear to everyone. We are not attacking Putin or Moscow. We are fighting on our territory, protecting our cities and villages." Zelensky said in Helsinki at a joint press conference with the heads of government of the Nordic countries, commenting at the request of journalists on the night attack of drones on Kremlin. Right, so big developments there being reported on this story. Let me welcome here on the program Mr. Bharat Karnat, Strategic Affairs expert, joining us on Mirror Now. Very good evening, Mr. Karnat. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I want to ask you that given the timing and the target, is Russia's version of what happened at the Kremlin credible? Is Ukraine likely to resort to a drone strike on Kremlin?
No, from the first indications, it seems not plausible that Ukraine has mounted this attack for various reasons. If you look at the video of the supposed attack, it almost looks fake in the sense that you have this small explosion somewhere and it's a visual sort of a thing that can be created in a studio, as you perhaps are aware. It's not a serious thing. The other thing is, assuming it was a seriously attack using a drone, the drone had to travel at the minimum 800 kilometers to reach Kremlin from the borderlands, let's say, of Ukraine. Now, that's a very long distance for a drone to travel. Drone is usually very slow moving. It's not a hypersonic missile. It's not a supersonic missile. It's just a
Right.
very slow-moving vehicle, which can be easily tracked by satellites, as I'm sure the Russian satellites tracked the progress of the drone as it ostensibly was targeting Kremlin and so on. And it could have brought it down at any time. I mean, the whole thing doesn't sound right.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that said, the fact is, it is for Moscow to decide what's an attack on its sovereignty, even if it's a fabricated thing. The idea, I suppose, is to put for Putin to put pressure on Zelensky by saying, well, you have attacked us, and therefore you're given us the all the reason in the world to retaliate very massively if we so choose to do. So it's, I think, an excuse that Putin and Moscow are seeking to somehow get back at Zelensky, whose forces, by the way, have pretty much fought the Russian forces to a standstill in Ukraine,
Yes.
which was not expected.
Right, that sounds quite possible and plausible. And for reasons that you cited, things do not add up. The pictures and the fact that, Russia is claiming, as in we can see in the pictures, that they're claiming it's a drone attack. The fact of the matter is that, would you then also go to the extent of saying that this is staged by Russia for the reasons that you cited again, to justify more violence against Ukraine? Is that what you're saying?
No, you see, well, it's very hard to know who has staged it or whether it was, in fact, even an attack. It is just a visual thing that's being shown the world with this video, extract or whatever it is. The fact is, first of all, you have to wonder if this is a night attack, how was the camera stationed there just to picture and photograph that attack? Or was the camera always there looking at the top of the Kremlin tower to see, to see the flag, the Russian flag waving? The fact is, as I said, the whole thing doesn't quite amount to a credible claim of an enemy attack, and certainly not by the Ukrainians.
The timing, Mr. Karnat, ahead of Victory Day, would you also attribute, some of it to the fact that there are elements hostile to Vladimir Putin within Russia? There is a losing popularity that he's dealing with at this point of time because of the kind of, damage that the Russian economy has suffered, which is sure to trickle down to the common Russians.
No, that's true. I mean, it's quite possible that, as I earlier indicated, that this is being sort of ballyhooed as an incident that would mobilize the Russian people's support behind the Putin regime in its actions in Ukraine and generally for the Russian conduct of the war in Ukraine. That's possible. And given the fact that the May Day parade, the May 9 parade is coming on, which is a big thing in Russia, signifying, as you have noted, the tremendous Soviet victory over the Nazi armies
Yes.
In the Second World War. So that's usually an occasion for celebrating the military might of the country, and in this case, perhaps seeking a sanction, popular sanction, for whatever actions Putin may have in mind to prosecute in the future.
Do you think this is then, whichever way you look at it, an escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war scenario? Will this hinder peace efforts? Have things only gone from bad to worse, where we are looking at a closure to the war? Things don't seem to be moving in that direction.
Well, look, whatever the Russians wanted to occupy by way of territory, they have now done. So let's be very clear about it. Whatever the Ukrainians have in mind by way of a counteroffensive and so on, is unlikely to succeed simply because Ukraine is a country whose manpower simply cannot match Russia's.
Okay.
So there are great limitations, even with the NATO supplies, resupplies, and so on. That's been set up through Poland and through an air bridge. But the fact is that, the Ukrainians can only do so much. And now that the Russians have what they want by way of a land bridge connecting Crimean Peninsula to the mainland through the Donbas region, the Russians are quite happy to stay in a holding kind of situation where they can just hold off any Ukrainian action or counteraction or so-called counteroffensive. So they're quite happy to stay put. And that's what's going to happen. I don't think Putin will really escalate in terms of really massively going in and hitting Kiev or using nuclear weapons, any of that kind of reaction.
Right.
Because it'll be so disproportionate to the provocation, assuming it was in fact a provocation offered by Zelensky's Kiev. I don't think this is anything other than, shall we say, flexing one's muscles
Right.
on the eve of the May 9 parade, and to show the world that if push comes to shove, Putin will not desist from going massively against its adversaries.
Right.
And I think
It's
this is a
building
signal
that
more to
narrative, like you put
Western
it, flexing
supporters.
muscles, perhaps some amount of posturing on the part of Putin. We leave it at that. Mr. Bharat Karnat, thank you so much for joining us with your views on the subject.